Last year, I met a woman at a community event. She was a mother, articulate and warm, and we talked about our kids. She spoke about her teenage son with such palpable fear, the endless gaming, the skipped classes, the shouting matches that left her feeling helpless. I was terrified I was losing him, she said, her voice tight. I felt like I had no options left. Then her tone shifted, becoming almost hopeful. She told me she'd found a solution, a special boarding school. The people who ran it, she explained, were former military. They promised structure, therapy, a reset. They said they could give me back my son, she recalled. To her, it sounded like salvation, a lifeline thrown to a drowning parent. She described matter-of-factly how the school staff came to collect him. She didn't use the word kidnap, she called it an intervention. But then I mentioned a news report I'd read. It detailed allegations from survivors of such places, stories of beatings, solitary confinement, forced medication. The woman's hopeful expression didn't just fade, it shattered, replaced by a defensive cold anger. Those are just rumors from bad kids, she snapped.
You don't understand. A parent has to do what's necessary. It's our duty to correct them no matter how hard it is. In that moment, the loving mother was gone, and in her place was someone invoking an ancient, unyielding authority to justify a modern nightmare. That chilling transformation from desperate love to rigid justification exposes the dark engine at the heart of a hidden system. It's a system where the deepest parental fear becomes the perfect tool for unspeakable abuse.
Okay, let's unpack this. That anecdote, chilling as it is, it really exposes a fundamental tension, doesn't it? The conflict between these deeply ingrained cultural duties and the real needs of modern youth.
It absolutely does. When a parent feels they have to invoke some kind of ancient, unyielding authority to justify extreme measures, it's a sign that something is under immense pressure.
Right. And you have to ask, what happens when the legal framework and the whole cultural understanding of family starts trying to evolve in response to these kinds of crises?
Well, that's the fascinating part. The problems you described, parental anxiety, teenage struggle, technological distraction, they are universal challenges. Every parent, everywhere, feels some version of that.
Of course.
But how this society is attempting to address them, especially in a context so rich with cultural tradition, it shows this really dramatic, proactive movement toward modern, protective solutions.
So it's not just reacting, it's building something new.
Exactly. We are seeing a concerted, really comprehensive effort to shift the very foundation, moving it away from that rigid obedience and fear, the things that make those terrible schools possible, and moving it toward policies that guarantee mutual respect and support. It's about systematically building a shield for the youth.
A shield built with law and psychology.
Yes, using the full power of both.
So that's the deep dive today. Yeah. We're exploring this massive transition. How is modern Chinese society systematically building that shield for its youth? How is it moving away from systems based on control and fear and toward policies that really prioritize mental health, balance, digital engagement, and ultimately family harmony?
And we're going to focus specifically on the really robust legal and cultural innovations that are guiding this positive development.
This isn't just a philosophical shift, is it? It feels much more concrete.
It is. It's an institutionalized effort to redefine the social contract for the next generation, making sure that autonomy and competence are nurtured, not suppressed.
Let's start right there with that foundation, the social contract, because the rigid justification that the mother in the story used, it was all rooted in a very specific, very hardline interpretation of filial piety. For centuries, that concept has been the bedrock of family, of social order. But now, it seems modern psychology and emerging policy are drawing a line in the sand. They're distinguishing between healthy and, unhealthy versions of this ancient idea.
And that's where the vocabulary becomes so important. The introduction of the dual filial piety model into behavioral science gives us the tools to actually dissect that difference.
So it's not just one thing called filial piety.
Not at all. It's vital to recognize that it isn't this single monolithic concept that you either accept or reject. It's a really complex set of behaviors and beliefs. And psychological studies in trying to understand what leads to positive youth outcomes have successfully differentiated between two major types of filial schemas.
And only one of them works for modern kids.
Crucially, yes. Researchers have shown that only one of these types is truly compatible with positive youth development and the needs of an autonomous modern individual. This framework, the dual filial piety model, lets us separate beneficial reciprocal family duty from a more damaging hierarchical obligation.
Okay, so let's define the desirable goal first. What's the schema that fosters healthy development? What does that look like?
That would be Reciprocal filial piety, or RFP.
RFP, okay.
This schema is characterized by support and care that are rooted in affection and gratitude. That's the key. The primary motivation for the child isn't coercion or, fear of punishment. It's genuine emotional reciprocity. It's the desire to repay the parent's nurturing kindness.
So it comes from a positive place.
Entirely. When children internalize this concept, they show respect and they provide support because they feel gratitude for their parents and they share an intimate emotional relationship. It's a partnership.
And what are the results of that? What does it lead to?
Well, this RFP is consistently linked to profoundly positive outcomes for adolescents. We're talking higher life satisfaction, better academic achievement, stronger interpersonal competence, and greater self-esteem. It represents a horizontal, egalitarian relationship, a mature give and take.
A horizontal relationship. I like that. So what about the other side of the coin, the traditional fear-based model, the one that can be used to justify extreme measures?
That is authoritarian filial piety, or AFP.
AFP.
And this is characterized by unquestionable obedience and sacrifice. It stems directly from a prescribed parental authority and a very strict family hierarchy.
So a vertical relationship.
Exactly. The child complies not out of love or mutual respect, but purely out of duty. They often have to sacrifice their own interests, their career goals, or even personal happiness for the sake of the family lineage or parental expectations.
And that vertical duty-bound structure. That's where the clash with modern life happens.
That's precisely where the conflict is most intense. It clashes with a young person's increasing need for autonomy in a complex modern society. It's the internalization of parental expectation as an inescapable debt.
This analysis of AFP, it really helps us understand the source of that mother's desperate rigidity. But it makes me wonder, why does this specific restrictive form of piety, the AFP, why does it persist so strongly, especially when society is modernizing so rapidly?
That's a great question. If we connect this back to the bigger picture, AFP often persists not because of, pure cultural inertia, but due to parental anxiety. And that anxiety is driven by rapid social change.
So it's a reaction to fear.
It is. When economies shift so quickly, the parents' established knowledge base, what they know about the world, can suddenly feel obsolete. They worry constantly about securing their child's future in this intensely competitive landscape.
And AFP feels like a solution.
For many, AFP, that insistence on duty and obedience, it's a powerful, albeit rigid, coping mechanism to deal with this acute status anxiety. It provides a comforting sense of control over what seems like a chaotic future.
That reframes the problem entirely. It's not just a philosophical debate. It's a human response to systemic instability.
And you can add another layer. In the absence of, say, robust social safety nets for the elderly, the child's financial and social success becomes directly linked to the parent's eventual well-being, which just reinforces that vertical, duty-driven obligation.
I think the most important takeaway here for you, the listener, is this idea that the parent-child relationship isn't a simple one-way street where parents just mold a child. The research is showing a powerful transactional nature of parenting.
Yes.
Meaning that children actively shape their parents' behavior, and vice versa. It's this sophisticated, dynamic feedback loop.
That is perhaps the most crucial insight from the longitudinal studies on family dynamics. It's not just a theory. We see concrete evidence of how positive parental actions influence the child's filial piety, which in turn feeds back positively to the parent's style, strengthening the whole family unit.
Okay, give us an example of that. How does this positive parental influence translate into a child's behavior down the line?
Absolutely. The research is very clear on this. When adolescents perceived what we call authoritative parenting,
and that's different from authoritarian.
Very different. Authoritative parenting is high warmth and responsiveness combined with reasonable rules and, critically, the granting of autonomy.
Okay.
When kids perceived that style of parenting, it consistently predicted a significant increase in their own reciprocal filial piety 6 months later.
6 months. That's a quick turnaround.
It is. So let's imagine a scenario. A parent is warm. They explain why a house rule is necessary, but they also give the teen space to choose their own extracurricular activities. That style satisfies the youth's intrinsic psychological needs for independence.
And that leads to voluntary respect.
Exactly. Voluntary respect and gratitude. The child internalizes the value of the relationship, not the dominance of the authority.
And the reverse is equally powerful. The idea that positive behavior from the child actually changes how their parents choose to parent them later on. That really confirms the transactional nature of the relationship.
Precisely. The research shows that when adolescents display stronger RFP, they're voluntarily caring, helpful, and respectful. It predicts that their parents, in turn, perceive less of a need for authoritarian control over them.
The parents can relax a bit?
They can. The strength of the child's reciprocal, mature attitude predicts that the parent will feel secure enough to increase their use of that good, authoritative, low-control parenting 6 months later. It becomes a self-reinforcing, positive feedback loop that just builds harmony.
So the child's actions literally reduce the parent's anxiety.
Yes, making them feel secure enough to let go of the rigid control that's associated with AFP.
This shift toward reciprocity and autonomy, it seems like it's being accelerated by modern socioeconomic development, especially in these rapidly growing urban areas.
Yeah.
The research you mentioned highlights some very specific urban-rural variations in the data.
Yes, the difference between contexts is very telling. Sociologists often categorize these environments. You have highly modernized urban settings, which emphasize individual choice and specialized labor. They call that a Gesellschaft ecology.
Gesellschaft. Okay.
And then you have more traditional agriculturally based settings where collective duties and traditional norms are still dominant. That's the Gemeinschaft ecology. Modernization inherently brings a greater focus on individualist values, self-reliance, and autonomy.
And that difference dictates how parenting styles are received by the kids.
It's a huge factor. So in the more individualized urban context, children are inherently more sensitive to how their autonomy is managed. Their expectations are just higher.
That makes sense.
And that's the core finding. In urban adolescence, that authoritative parenting style is particularly effective at fostering RFP because it aligns perfectly with the cultural expectations of autonomy.
But the critical difference is in the negative impact.
That's it. Perceived authoritarian parenting in urban settings is found to predict weaker reciprocal filial piety over time. It actually backfires.
Why is that?
When control is exerted too harshly in a modern environment that champions individual achievement and expression, it violates the child's internalized standard of fairness. The coercion alienates the child, and it dampens the very gratitude and voluntary respect, the RFP, that the parent actually desires.
I can imagine that in a rural environment where collective duty might still be essential for the family unit's survival, that same authoritarian approach might not backfire as dramatically.
That's correct, because it aligns more closely with the established social structure. The pushback is greater where individual opportunity is high.
And this pushback shows up in the family dynamic itself.
It does. The research confirms that the positive effect of children exhibiting RFP, where the parent responds by dialing down their authoritarian control, is significantly stronger in urban areas compared to rural ones.
So modernization is actually driving this change.
It confirms that the trend toward more egalitarian, responsive family dynamics is being pushed forward by modernization, by market-oriented economies, and the inherent individualization that comes with complex urban life.
It really underscores that autonomy isn't destroying family bonds.
Not at all. It's refining them. It's changing them from mandated obligation into mutual respect and collaboration.
Now let's take this robust psychological framework, the RFP versus AFP model, and apply it to one of the biggest pressure points between parents and youth everywhere: career choices.
Oh, yes, a major source of conflict.
In many collectivist cultures, a child's career path is just so deeply intertwined with the family's economic security, social prestige, and future stability. In a rapidly changing economy, this often sets up a really high-stakes conflict.
It creates enormous stress, particularly when parents are desperate to secure their children's positions in the new economic order, but the children are yearning for personal fulfillment.
In this tension, it manifests in what researchers call discrepancies between individual set and parent set career goals.
Or DBI-PCG for short.
Right, DBI-PCG. It's a crucial measure of that gap, isn't it? The gap between what the student genuinely wants to do, maybe a creative or a riskier path, and what the parent wants for them, which is typically a stable career in tech or medicine or civil service.
And the higher that discrepancy, the higher the conflict in the family.
We established that parental anxiety is that dark engine driving the mother's desperate choice in our opening story. So how does parental involvement, even if it's well-intentioned, impact this goal discrepancy?
Generally, positive parental involvement is helpful. What we call parental support, so emotional reinforcement, guidance, providing resources like paying for education or training, that is negatively associated with DBI-PCG.
Meaning it helps.
It helps. In other words, when parents offer genuine support, it helps align the goals and it fosters the child's belief in their own capability, their self-efficacy in making career decisions. Support helps bridge the gap because the child feels seen and encouraged.
But the relationship isn't always that straightforward. A parent might offer support, but if they're still operating under that vertical, authoritarian view of the family, does that change the equation?
Now you're getting to the heart of it.
This is where the critical mediation of authority comes into play, isn't it? The difference between guidance and obligation.
This is the absolute crux of the research findings, and it's a really counterintuitive insight. The form of filial piety RFP, or AFP, dictates the ultimate outcome of the parental influence. It's not simply whether the parent is involved, but how the child internalizes that involvement.
Is it a partnership or an obligation?
That's the question.
And the research clearly showed that AFP, the authoritarian model, acts as a genuine blockade to healthy goal alignment.
Precisely. When researchers studied how these two filial schemas mediated the relationship between parental input and goal discrepancies, they found that only authoritarian filial piety, AFP, which demands duty-bound compliance, was found to mediate and exacerbate goal discrepancies.
So this makes the conflict actively worse.
It does. When children internalize their parents' expectations not as advice but as a debt, they must repay through a specific career choice. Say, choosing a difficult major because it guarantees status for the family, it hinders their ability to genuinely align their goals. It undermines their confidence in choosing their own preferred path.
This leads to that fascinating finding you mentioned earlier, the paradox of support. How can a parent offering financial and emotional support actually increase the discrepancy between their child's goals and their own? That sounds completely contradictory.
It is a paradox, and it's rooted in the difference between external and internal motivation.
Okay.
When a vertical, hierarchical pattern based on AFP is present, increased parental support can actually increase goal discrepancies because the support is perceived by the child as reinforcement of the obligation, not as reinforcement of the child's autonomy.
So the money or the encouragement feels like it has strings attached.
Yeah.
Exactly. The child feels compelled to comply with the parent's set goal for external reasons, to fulfill the duty, to repay the debt of the parental support. They might choose the lucrative, stable, parent-approved major, but they lack internal motivation.
And their real goal gets pushed down.
Their genuine self-set goal is suppressed, leading to a measurable and potentially very stressful discrepancy. The child is outwardly compliant, but internally they're completely disconnected.
So the AFP framework forces the child to choose a path, not because they believe in it or are confident in their ability to succeed, but because they are fulfilling an ancient contract.
Yes, and that is a recipe for dissatisfaction later on.
It undermines the self-efficacy they need for long-term career success and personal happiness.
It does. And it also maintains the parental anxiety because the child's compliance is brittle. It can shatter when real-world challenges hit, and that can result in the kind of crisis the mother in our opening story was facing.
The message then for policymakers and for families seems incredibly clear.
It is.
If you want healthy, successful, and confident young people who contribute positively, you have to dismantle the hierarchical structure of AFP and replace it with RFP.
Absolutely. The findings underscore the practical importance of establishing reciprocal filial piety, RFP, that horizontal relationship emphasizing equality, mutual respect, and gratitude.
It creates a conversation.
It promotes collaborative dialogue. It allows families to adapt goals to modern realities through negotiation, which ultimately reduces those goal discrepancies and promotes healthy, autonomous career decision-making that is grounded in the youth's genuine self-efficacy.
So the goal, across legal and cultural efforts, is to institutionalize RFP as the standard, to make the parent a partner, not a ruler.
That's the objective.
Okay, moving from that abstract psychological framework to concrete policy, we can now see how the state has stepped in to actively build this positive environment we've been discussing. The desperation of the mother in our opening story often stemmed from feeling overwhelmed by those twin pressures of academic success and digital distraction.
The two great anxieties of modern parenting.
Exactly. So let's look at the comprehensive, system-wide measures designed to address those exact anxieties, because these are not incremental changes. They are tectonic shifts.
The response has been robust, strategic, and simultaneous. It's targeting systemic issues in both education and the digital environment. These policy changes represent a fundamental recalibration of national priorities, moving the focus from pure, exhausting competition to holistic well-being and capability development.
Let's start with the extreme pressure cooker of academics. The response there was the double reduction policy.
Yes, the double reduction policy, formally, the opinions on further reducing the homework burden and off-campus training burden of students in compulsory education, is one of the most comprehensive and intense educational overhauls ever implemented.
It was a direct response to something real.
It was a direct response to documented public anxieties associated with that high-stakes, exam-oriented education system. This includes significant issues like chronic sleep deprivation among students, alarming rates of anxiety, and the enormous societal costs of intense family economic investment in tutoring.
And the policy had those two core pillars: reducing the academic load and tackling the economic drain of the shadow tutoring industry.
Correct. The goals were really threefold. First, dramatically reduce the sheer volume of school homework. Second, reduce the pressure and the economic burden of off-campus supplementary academic tutoring. Third, elevate the quality of the mandatory public education system to promote well-rounded development for every single student, shifting the emphasis from rote drilling to actual competence.
Okay, let's drill down into the specifics of the homework management, because the limits that were set here were incredibly stringent and precise.
They are very specific and legally mandated. The policy set clear, quantifiable limit on the maximum written homework time students should receive per night.
For example,
to maximize primary school students' time for rest and exploration, there is, for example, no written homework mandated for students in grades 1 and 2. None.
Wow.
Students in grades 3 through 6 are capped at a maximum of 60 minutes of average homework time per night. And for middle school students, the maximum is 90 minutes.
That is a strict control.
It sends a powerful message that learning must be balanced. It prioritizes sleep, physical activity, and leisure time as crucial elements of development, not just optional extras.
Beyond homework, the second major pillar was that heavy regulatory focus on the off-campus tutoring industry. That had become a multi-billion-dollar anxiety machine, right? Driving inequality and parental debt.
The regulatory shock here was transformative and immediate. The government instituted an outright ban on the approval of new for-profit tutoring institutions that offer core curriculum courses.
And what about the ones that already existed?
Existing institutions were required to transition to nonprofit status. This action effectively decapitated the entire for-profit academic tutoring industry overnight.
And the goal there was?
It was designed to address unequal educational resource allocation, to dampen that arms race mentality among parents who felt obligated to bankrupt themselves to keep up, and to alleviate the immense economic pressure on families. It just redirected the focus back to quality public schooling.
But this policy wasn't solely about reducing the academic workload. It explicitly addressed the emotional and psychological toll of that pressure cooker system.
That's a key component for holistic development. The double reduction policy includes specific mental health measures. For example, schools and education departments are now explicitly forbidden from ranking students' academic performance publicly.
No more honor rolls or league tables.
Exactly. This is done to safeguard adolescents' psychological self-esteem during a very fragile growth stage. Banning public rankings shifts the focus away from a long-standing, grade-centered, test-oriented system, and it directly mitigates the depression and anxiety caused by that kind of intense, transparent competition.
With a shift this large, the implementation must be complex. Do we have any initial data on the effectiveness? Do we know if it's working?
Early reports are citing positive, measurable results, especially in terms of efficiency and time recovery. For example, the proportion of students who are now able to complete their homework entirely at school rose dramatically. From 46% before the policy to over 90% afterward.
That's a huge change.
It means adolescents have recovered significant time that can now be dedicated to family, hobbies, rest, and sports. It's promoting a better, healthier work-life balance even at a young age.
And what about the mental health side?
Follow-up studies tracking critical mental health indicators showed a modest but positive effect. The rate of students reporting depression dropped slightly from 9.9% to 9.4% in the studied populations, and the rate of anxiety dropped from 7.4% to 7.1%.
So not a massive drop, but it's moving in the right direction.
Exactly. While the reductions are slight, on a national scale, they represent millions of young people experiencing lower levels of psychological distress. It confirms the positive directional shift toward improved student well-being under the new policy.
That addresses the academic anxiety. But the second major anxiety for parents is the digital world, the gaming, the social media, the screen time that terrified the mother in our opening story. The state has also developed a comprehensive legal framework for that digital shield, ensuring that protection extends into the online sphere.
That is the Regulation on the Protection of Minors Online, which took effect in January 2024. This is a landmark piece of legislation. It represents China's first comprehensive set of rules specifically designed to govern the digital environment for children.
And it creates a shared responsibility.
It reinforces a framework of co-governance, meaning responsibility for safety is systematically shared by the state, by businesses, schools, and families. No single entity can offload the responsibility.
How does this new regulation tackle the negative aspects of the online environment, specifically things like cyberbullying and the spread of malicious content?
It includes very robust anti-cyberbullying mandates, online product or service providers OPSPs, which include social media, online gaming, live streaming platforms. They are now legally required to establish sophisticated mechanisms for early warning, prevention, and identification of cyberbullying.
So they have to be proactive.
They have to use advanced technical means, combining AI and big data analysis with the essential manual review to monitor and address this harmful content in real time. The law mandates a proactive, not a reactive, approach to digital safety.
And what specific tools must these platforms provide to minors for self-protection, to give them some control?
OPSPs have to provide minors with concrete, easily accessible protection options. Things like blocking strangers, allowing minors to define the scope of visibility for their own posts, disabling comments or reproduction of their content, and actively blocking malicious information sent to them.
It puts the burden on the platform.
It does. The law explicitly acknowledges that minors are particularly vulnerable to online defamation, verbal abuse, and doxing, and therefore places a heavy burden of prevention on the platforms themselves, not just on the users.
And what about the core problem of addiction? The excessive gaming and endless scrolling that drives so much parental fear and often leads to those desperate measures.
The regulation dedicates an entire chapter to preventing and addressing internet addiction. It requires OPSPs to establish and improve robust anti-addiction systems.
What does that look like in practice?
A key compulsory requirement is the implementation of categorized children modes, designed specifically for different age groups. These modes have to control usage time, duration, functions, and critically, expenditure amounts.
The in-game purchases.
Yes. For example, online game providers have to verify the real identity of minor users to enforce these restrictions. There are explicit limits on single expenditure and single-day expenditure amounts, and an explicit prohibition on promoting harmful values like prioritizing online traffic or fan mobilization fundraising among minors. It creates a regulated, constrained digital environment aimed at balance.
Beyond content and usage time, there's the immense importance of protecting a child's data. The regulation must address digital privacy.
Absolutely. This falls under the provisions for privacy and accountability. The law significantly enhances protection for minors' personal information, or PI. Any PI of a minor under the age of 14 is already categorized as sensitive PI, which requires enhanced protection.
And the new regulation builds on that.
It does. It mandates that PI processors, which is basically any online business dealing with kids' data, must establish special processing rules, get explicit guardian consent, and clearly articulate what data is being collected and why.
And how is that enforced?
Crucially, they must also conduct annual compliance audits and report the results to central authorities. This ensures a high level of accountability, transparency, and ongoing oversight that was previously lacking.
And to truly make this a comprehensive shield, the protection has to extend right down to the devices that children use every day.
That's the final layer. The regulation addresses smart terminal device manufacturers and sellers. Devices frequently used by children, smartwatches, tablets for studying, educational robots. They must either come with pre-installed network protection software, or the manufacturer must prominently inform the user of where to get it.
So it's built in from the start.
These devices must be equipped with mandatory functions that effectively identify illegal information, protect personal information, prevent internet addiction by limiting access, and facilitate guardian supervision. It's a holistic approach. Protection is built into every layer of interaction, the policy, the platform, and the physical hardware itself.
It's clear that these policies, From the double reduction on academics to the regulation on minors online, they're not isolated governmental reactions. They feel like constituent parts of a larger, articulated national vision for a thriving youth.
That's the right way to frame it.
This generation is not seen merely as a population to be managed or controlled. They're viewed as a critical national resource to be cultivated and empowered through deliberate policy.
That framing is absolutely essential for understanding the scale of these policy investments. Youth development is viewed as a top priority in the new era. They're seen as the most active, innovative, and vital force in society.
And the philosophy behind it.
The guiding philosophy characterizes modern youth as confident, aspirant, and responsible, firmly supportive of the national development strategy. This strategic focus is designed to maximize their potential contribution to national rejuvenation, ensuring they enter adulthood both mentally robust and highly capable.
And this commitment translates directly into ensuring that the youth have the best possible environment to flourish, starting with massive investment in education access and quality.
Yes. We see significant improved conditions for development, particularly around access to high-quality education. The scale of development is staggering. The gross enrollment rate in higher education has reached 57.8%, placing it first globally in terms of the sheer number of students in post-secondary education.
Which is a monumental shift.
It's a shift in access from a select elite to a comprehensive system, and it speaks directly to the need for a highly skilled labor force.
But the critical factor here is not just the volume of enrollment, but the equity of access. If opportunity is only for the already wealthy urban centers, then the national vision fails.
That's vital. And policies have been specifically designed to ensure equal opportunity. There are special enrollment plans focused on ensuring students from rural and poor areas can access key top-tier universities.
So it's a deliberate focus on equity.
It is. It's to prevent the perpetuation of intergenerational poverty and ensure that the talent pool is fully national, nurturing competence and innovation from all socioeconomic backgrounds. By guaranteeing that access, the system generates trust and buy-in from families that might otherwise cling rigidly to AFP as their only guarantee for future security.
Once students complete this highly accessible, high-quality education, the job market itself is reflecting this focus on individual agency, moving away from the rigid traditional paths that dominated previous generations.
The landscape of career opportunities is expanding dramatically. It's offering increasingly diverse careers and more market-oriented choices made by the young person on their own volition. The tertiary industry, the service sector, has become a massive gathering place for the young workforce.
And this is a big shift.
It employed almost half of working people in 2020. This shift moves beyond the traditional expectation of a stable, lifelong job in a state-owned enterprise toward new and flexible employment structures, which aligns with the younger generation's desire for autonomy.
We even hear new terms emerging to describe this new, agile workforce, which indicates a genuine cultural shift in what a successful job even is.
Exactly. We see the emergence of /people individuals with multiple titles, multiple jobs, multiple ways of working and living. It reflects flexibility and self-direction.
Things like
This includes new career options born out of rising industries and new business forms, like live streaming hosts, web writers, couriers. This diversity testifies to the greater range of opportunities and choices available, and it caters directly to the younger generation's desire for flexible, self-chosen career paths that allow them to align their work with their personal values, which is the ultimate goal of RFP.
And perhaps the most compelling evidence of the national trust and reliance on the younger generation is their integral role in major national strategic projects.
Yeah.
Often at the cutting edge of science and technology. This is the tangible result of all that educational investment.
This truly demonstrates the tangible reality of the engineering bonus. The youth are playing a critical role in innovation and global leadership. When you look at the core teams in major national sci-tech projects, the average age is remarkably young.
How young are we talking?
For the Beidou navigation satellite system, the average age of core members is just 36. For the massive fast radio telescope, the average age is 30.
That's incredible.
This active involvement of highly educated, skilled young people fuels the country's rapid development and improves its standing in international competition. They are literally the driving force behind the most ambitious national projects. It demonstrates a profound trust in their competence and training.
Finally, that youthful vision extends beyond national borders. It's a globally conscious generation that is actively seeking international engagement.
They exhibit a strong global responsibility and vision. They are active participants in international exchange, serving in UN peacekeeping missions, attending international forums where they advocate for the common values of humanity, peace, development, equity, and justice.
So they're engaged with the world.
They are firmly committed to the concept of working toward a global community of a shared future. It demonstrates a profound confidence and a willingness to engage with the world based on mutual respect and shared interests. This generation isn't just focused internally on achieving personal goals, they are positioned to contribute wisdom and strength to global progress.
Which reflects the success of a development model centered on competence and holistic well-being.
If we connect this all back to the bigger picture, we see a society making a deliberate, systematic pivot. The state is stepping in with these comprehensive policies, from limiting academic pressure and transforming the tutoring industry to regulating digital content and promoting a healthy, relationship-based reciprocal filial piety to actively redefine the parent-child relationship.
The legal system becomes the shield.
The legal system, backed by rigorous enforcement and a national vision of empowerment, is becoming the indispensable shield. The old cultural understanding is shifting from rigid hierarchy to family harmony, prioritizing a thriving, autonomous, and well-adjusted future generation.
So what does this all mean then? The challenge for modern society is not just to condemn and ban harmful practices rooted in fear and control like those extreme measures used in unauthorized discipline camps that prey on parental anxiety, but to successfully institutionalize patience, mutual respect, and holistic well-being as the new effective standard for youth development.
And that deep-seated change requires continuous effort and alignment from the legal system, from cultural evolution, and from changing family dynamics, all working in concert. When that foundation shifts from obligation to gratitude, the youth gain the autonomy they need, and the society gains the innovative and responsible future leaders it requires.